and welcome to another watercolor tutorial video. In this video we will be sketching and painting capybaras with watercolor paint. Now the reason that I chose this topic, I obviously think that you have been seeing capybaras all over the place lately, but for me it's my youngest daughter who is crazy about these animals. So it's capybara here and there, and I felt inspired to draw them, mostly for her, but I thought it would be fun to create a tutorial video about this as well. So please note that this is the first time ever that I have been drawing and painting capybaras, so for me it's also a first. But I suggest that you follow along with me and bear with me as I am trying to figure this out myself as well. So when you want to join in this tutorial, then in the description I always list the materials that I use. And for this I'm starting with this sketch on watercolor paper, and I'm using an HB pencil. I'm always using an HB pencil for sketching. The main reason is that an HB pencil is easier to erase from your paper, and at least I don't like to see too much of my pencil lines in the end result. So I also usually sketch a little bit thinner than I am doing right now, but otherwise you won't be able to see what I'm drawing at all. So try to draw as thin as possible, and you can always use a soft eraser to erase pencil lines that you don't need any longer or when you're not satisfied with them, and you can use a kneading eraser to lift off the excess pencil once you are finished with your sketch and ready to start painting. That way you have really thin lines so you know where to paint, but it won't be too prominent in the end result. So when it comes to drawing the capybara, I know that this might be a difficult topic to follow along. So as usually I'm going to create an outline, and it's going to be available via the link you can find in the description, and you can use that as a reference. Now when you look at a capybara and its shape, one thing that always stands out is its face, with the rectangle nose, like vertical rectangle shaped nose. So for the face you need to draw some like rectangle shapes and use some more straight lines, and just make sure to look at their body. They are a bit big in comparison to their head, and their legs, they have these pointy toes, and of course it doesn't need to be too perfect. You don't need to really, at least I suggest that you don't try to make it too realistic or too perfectionistic, because then you put a lot of pressure on yourself, at least when you are not that experienced with sketching. So just try to focus on the main characteristics so you can see that it's a capybara. So this view from the side, you can see how like straight lines you need to use for that face, for it's just for the back, for the like in the front below the face, it's all straight lines, only that the behind of the capybara is round, and like the back of the head is round, it's curved, but the rest is really straight lines. So perhaps this one lying down in the bottom is a very easy go-to to try first. So what my aim is with this tutorial video, or at least with this art print that I'm making with the several capybaras, is to draw them in all kinds of positions. So that was my goal for this exercise, is to try and sketch them in different positions. I always do that when I draw or paint a new subject, mostly when I draw new animals that I haven't painted before. I have painted a lot of animals, but still there are so many more that I have never painted. So I always try to do some sketches in different angles just to get to know the animal. Another suggestion that I can do to make it easier for you is that you go to Pinterest and that you create a board just for capybaras, and that you just go browsing through Pinterest and you pin every image that you like and just study those images. That's the thing with sketching. You first need to look at something and learn to see. So at this point I'm finished with the sketching, and you saw me using the kneading eraser to lift off all the excess pencil, and now I am starting to paint. So just before I'm going to talk you through the painting, I just want to mention again that I created an outline for you that you can download and use as a reference, or perhaps even trace, so that the sketching part isn't the hard part for you at this moment, and that you can now follow along with the painting. So excuse me, I went talking too much about the sketching, so if you need to, just rewind a little bit and you can watch me paint, or you can just make sure you have your supplies and you can start along with me. So painting this capybara, I am just going to give all the capybaras on my paper a basic layer with my burnt umber. So it's a brown color. I'm making sure that I have enough water on my brush, so I wanted to make it a light wash, and then there are a few places that I want to already give a bit of a shade, make it darker. So if you use reference photos for this, then you can really look at your capybara and try to notice where the darker areas are and where you have the shade. And another thing that I'm using, a technique that I try to use, is to keep some white space in between the areas where I don't want the paint to touch each other. So basically with the sketch we created like a coloring sheet that we just need to color in with our paint, so the key is to stay within those lines. And of course that sounds way easier than it might be, because in some places we didn't draw any line, but still if you would look at a reference photo you would see that there is difference in color or in darkness, and that's something that you want to take in account when you are painting. But for now I am doing this light wash with my burnt umber, so even the places that I know need to be darker or have a different color, I'm just doing first this layer with my same color, and I'm just trying to already have some darker places and some lighter places that I can later on use as a reference for my next layer. I always love building up my watercolor illustrations like this, and especially when I am painting different kinds of the same type on my page, I still like the colors to be like unified most of the time, and if not, then I always want them to be balanced, but that's just for another topic. For now I want these beautiful animals to all have the same color palette, and even though that on some of the reference photos they look redder or darker, I just want these to just look the same. And that's something that makes it easier for me, because I'm kind of practicing getting to know these beautiful creatures and to know where I need to have some shade, where it needs to be light, where I need to emphasize on the fur. And of course I can play around with this beautiful face. And I think that the face is really the fun part to paint. And I don't know, it feels kind of easy because that vertical rectangle with the stripe in the middle and those nostrils, it just, well, it feels doable. And it immediately, really immediately gives this beautiful animal the characteristic that it needs to look like a capybara. So I hope that this doesn't feel too difficult and doesn't overwhelm you. Don't get like, don't let it hold you back. That's what I want to say. Just keep on trying. And there's also no harm in trying several times. You don't need to have it perfect in one go. And just keep on trying. When it comes to the sketching, of course you can always try out sketching on cheaper paper first, like printer paper, before you create your actual sketch and outline on the watercolor paper. And when it comes to the watercolor paper, well, I think there's just one way to learn how to do this, and that's just do it. And you can follow along with me, look what I'm doing, and I just try to talk you through it as much as I can. So as you can see, I started at the top and I have mixed some indigo blue with my burnt umber to create a darker brown, and I use that as a shade at the bottom of my capybara. And then I use some raw sienna to add some reddish color, and I'm not putting the paint everywhere, and I'm making sure that while the paint is still wet, that it blends in very nicely with the layer beneath. Now when it comes to the nose of the capybara, I gently have traced the outline of the nose, you know, the vertical stripe I was talking about. And I know that later on, once that paint is dry, I'm going to use some paint to paint on those nostrils there, but I first want this layer to finish before I'm going to add those details. And now I'm going to use those same colors, so that blue, indigo blue with my burnt umber that I mixed, I'm going to use that as a shade on the other capybaras as well. I'm looking at my reference photos to see where it needs some shade or a darker color. And I might go back to my previous capybara to use the same. And I'm also using that burnt sienna to give it that red color. And one thing that I like to do is go alongside the sides, because that's where usually it's a bit darker. That's the shade effect. And I use water on my brush to brush out the paint that's already in my paper to make sure that the lines are less harsh, or that the paint can blend in with another color that's already there. I also, for this one, have used the yellow ochre, and I am going to use that for all the others as well. So moving on, I'm just using that same color palette, and I might add one or two things, but I think this is going to be it for now. And just trying to add some color and details on the places that feel right. So again, you can follow along with what I'm doing here, or just look at your rectangle and really look at where it needs to have some shade, where it needs to have some color. And I know that for the capybaras that are sitting down, those legs that are very close to everything behind it and to the body. So because of the paint still being wet, I don't like to put in too dark of a color there yet, because then it's going to blend in with anything else. Now for this one, it's alright because on the bottom it needs to be dark. It's just playing around a bit and just checking where your paint is wet, where do you want to avoid blending it in with another layer, then you just wait, and otherwise it's just safe to go and create your washes. Now one thing that I like to do as well is use my brush in a way to create strokes so that it looks like fur, like you're drawing in some strokes with your brush to create the effect of a fur texture. So I'm just continue doing this for every capybara, and I must say that also using my reference photos and the process I'm going through with each capybara, I'm learning a bit more and I know what to apply next with the others as well. So one thing, again, I try to emphasize that you don't need to stress out. It doesn't need to be perfect. You have your sketch. You just draw that in. And the main things to pay attention to is where are the shades, where are the darker areas. Look at your picture and notice where does the capybara has which color, and don't sweat too much that you might not be able to grab that exact color to paint on it. You can use the same color palette as what I am going for, or use a few colors that you like. It doesn't need to be perfect. But what I really love as cool colors for my capybara is, as I said, it's the burnt umber, it's the burnt sienna, and it's the yellow ochre, and I love the combination. And I'm using the indigo blue to blend in with my burnt umber to get a darker brown. So those are my go-to colors, and I'm just mixing it up and letting the watercolor do the blending itself on the paper, and I'm loving that. And then, of course, when I'm satisfied with a layer, I'm letting it dry and I'm going to add on another layer, and I'm just going to build it up like that. And I am using that dark color to create the shades, but also these capybaras, what I've noticed is that their legs are dark and their feet or paws, or how do you call it, with their toes, they are dark as well, and they have got some dark spots on their ears, and of course on their noses, their nostrils, and their eyes. And for the other parts, for their fur, you want to look at the shading and add some burnt sienna and yellow ochre there, and some burnt umber as well. So just building it up, working myself up to the upper side of my paper now, and just, going through these beautiful animals one by one, adding some extra details. So for this one, I even am adding the eye already. I'm using like the dark brown and indigo blue combination, or I'm going for indigo blue. So maybe I'm going to add something on top of there, because I really love the intensity and the high pigmentation of the indigo blue. Is like really my favorite color. I almost never use black to paint something that needs to be black. I choose indigo blue. So okay, so far my crush on that color. And well, another thing I can say, you see me do this painting, the entire painting, with a round brush size 6, and this round brush has a very nice pointy bit, so I can use that point to gently paint the details, like the eye, the nose, the lines, and the strokes for the fur. But I can also use the rest of my brush for the larger areas that I need to paint in. So I love to work with round brushes like this. As you can see, it's very easy to paint those furs. And another thing you see me do is paint something and then use water on my brush. I'm cleaning my brush, putting water on it, and then I'm brushing it out to make it a bit lighter again. So I have let this layer dry, and I'm continuing with building it up, painting in those details. So painting the eyes, adding some details around the ears and the nose, and just continuing. I don't really know what to say about the process too much at this point. I'm just continue doing what I have been doing with the others so far. And I guess it's just a building up of the shade and then making sure that you have the details, you have those eyes, those noses, and the fur. Not to forget those paws, because for this one I haven't done the paws yet. Going to do that, and I'm going to make them darker as well. Yeah, so at some point when you get a hang of it, it becomes a very nice and mindful exercise to just keep on building, keep on painting, and just go with the flow, do what feels right. I love to play around with painting on that fur. This is, I guess, my favorite part of a painting, when you are going to start adding those details and you see something really coming to life, and it's just, I love it. I'm really happy with the result. I know that I'm going to make those eyes and everything darker to really make them pop, but I am really loving how this is, well, the direction this is going in. As you can see, my amount of details is becoming higher and higher. I am painting more of those fur details, and I am mostly using my burnt umber for this at this point. And I am playing around a bit with the intensity, so I'm not making them the same length or thickness or color. And I mostly go around the edges and sometimes a little bit inward, trying to really giving some depth to the creatures, so they're becoming a bit 3D instead of like flat illustrations. I also love to create that effect when you go to the sides and then you draw some fur, some strokes outward of the animal, so that it really is nice, has like a soft fur. I love that part. So a few of these are almost finished, and I'm just moving on to the next and the next. So I can imagine that this is going very fast for you. I don't want to play these videos on the original speed, because then those videos, they take a lot of time. Please don't get stressed about how long creating a painting like this can take. Just enjoy the time in the process. I just wanted to say that if you need to, then don't hesitate to pause the video and even rewind it a couple of times when you are losing track, when I'm going too fast. That's totally fine. Now, as you can see, I have been using my indigo blue and starting to paint those eyes and those nostrils on top of the capybaras, and I am really loving the effect. They are really turning into beautiful creatures on the paper now. I hope that you are just as exciting with your result as I am. And now just continuing adding those other details, just building up the image. So now I think we are done with the capybaras. For one important detail left to do, and that is using some white gouache with your teeny tiny round brush and adding a little dot within those eyes. Just some extra detail, and it really finishes off these beautiful animals, and I'm really very happy with the result. Now there's one thing that I want to do for this art print, and it's completely optional. You can follow along if you want to, but of course you don't have to, especially if you have just been watching this for the capybaras. But I sometimes love to add some florals or leaves around my animals that I'm painting. And I must admit that for a brief moment I have been thinking about painting some mandarins around these capybaras, but I think I'm going to just make an entire different illustration with a capybara and a mandarin, because I guess I just have to. But for now I just wanted it to be florals because it seems like a good fit. And I guess I'm doing this also because I'm getting a bit nervous about that white space around my animals. Of course, don't need to be, but when I was sketching, it felt like those white space areas were too small for me to draw in another capybara. So I figured that later on, and that point is now, I just could add some leaves or even flowers to just make it a playful, very nice piece of art. And there's another thing that I do with my watercolor creations, and that is digitize it and create patterns with it. And now I have some beautiful assets to create beautiful patterns with. So I am mostly using some sap green and some darker green and pink and orange to create these flowers, and I try to make sure that I am drawing the same type of leaves and florals spread out over this art piece so that this is one total, like everything fits together beautiful. I love that. And while the paint is still wet of these leaves and florals, I'm dropping in some other colors playfully around the page. I really love the characteristic it gives, and you know, it's like less flat. It gives it some interest. And what I love to do as well, I'm feeling inspired to add some grass on top of this painting. Now let your painting dry completely before adding details on top of your leaves. But this is one thing that I always love doing. It gives it a little bit extra, makes it really pop, and that is adding those lines, those details on top of the leaves. It's also a very mindful exercise, very easy, and just enjoy the process. And then we are almost done with this painting. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you love your result. Please share it on your social media and tag me at Sandra Art Studio, or use the hashtag #CreateWithSandras. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do and hit that bell notification. This way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.